You know, the cross is probably one of the most recognized symbols on the entire planet. But let's go deeper. Beyond the historical event itself, what did the death of Jesus actually mean to his very first followers? That question, well, it unlocks an incredibly complex and powerful story. So, let's dive in.
So right off the bat, what did Jesus' death actually accomplish in the eyes of his first followers? That's really the central mystery we're going to unpack. The story might feel familiar, but the theology behind it is just unbelievably rich.
And to really get our heads around this, you've got to understand something super important. The New Testament writers didn't just hand us one simple, neat answer.
Instead, what they did was they pulled from all these powerful ideas that people back then would have totally understood. Think things like temple rituals, even cosmic battles, all to paint a picture of just how massive this event really was.
All right, so let's break down 4 of the main ways, or you could call them lenses, that they used to make sense of the cross.
Yeah, they used these incredible metaphors, seeing the cross as this deep spiritual purification, a massive victory over evil, the ultimate example of what love looks like, and even as a kind of ransom. And here's the cool part. Each one of these gives us a slightly different angle on the same huge event.
Okay, so first up, purification. This one pulls heavily from the book of Hebrews, right? So early Christians started seeing Jesus' death through the lens of temple sacrifice. The whole idea was, you know how in the Old Testament, blood was required for cleansing from sin? Well, they saw Jesus' sacrifice as the ultimate one, the one that gets the job done perfectly, once and for all.
And you see this idea spelled out so clearly in the first letter of John. The message is just boom, right there. It's about a deep, spiritual, and moral cleansing.
But wait, it gets bigger. Because the cross wasn't just about something happening inside a person. Oh no. For a lot of early believers, this was the main event in a war that spanned the entire cosmos.
This is a big one. It's called the Christus Victor model, which just means Christ the victor. And in this way of thinking, the crucifixion, well, it's not a loss at all. It's the exact opposite. It's the moment of absolute, ultimate victory over sin, death, and every dark force you can imagine.
Okay, so bringing it back down to a more personal level, the cross was also seen as the ultimate moral example. I mean, the writer of 1 Peter basically says, look at this. Christ's suffering wasn't just some random event. It was a blueprint, a radical new pattern for his followers to see what real, self-giving love actually looks like when it's put into practice.
Now, all of those ideas are super important, don't get me wrong. But the source material we're looking at really argues that if you had to pick one theme that stands out the most in the New Testament, it's this idea of substitution. And that's what theologians call substitutionary atonement. It's this core belief that Jesus didn't just die for us in a general sense. No, the idea is much more specific. He died in our place. He literally took our sin, our mess, onto himself and faced the consequences that should have been ours. And this wasn't just some fringe idea. It's a major theme you see woven all through the New Testament. You've got writers like Paul and Peter hitting this point again and again, this idea of Christ bearing our sins, becoming a curse for us, and dying on our behalf.
Okay, and this idea of substitution brings up a really deep theological question that people have debated for centuries. So, did Jesus' death work by satisfying God's justice? That's a concept called propitiation, kind of like balancing the scales of justice. Or was it more about just wiping our slate clean, which is called expiation? Now, the source material here points out that for the Apostle Paul, that first idea, propitiation, satisfying justice, was absolutely central to what happened on the cross.
And right here, this is where the whole story takes a massive turn. Because for all the talk about the crucifixion, for all its weight and meaning, the story was nowhere near done. Death did not get the final word. See, in the minds of the first Christians, the cross and the resurrection, they're not two separate stories. They are two halves of the same event. They're totally inseparable. You just can't have one without the other. The cross means nothing without the empty tomb. So, what did the resurrection actually do? Well, theologically speaking, it accomplished at least 4 huge things. First, it vindicated Jesus, proving he was who he said he was. It installed him as the true Messiah King. It was the ultimate triumph over all the powers of evil. And, maybe most importantly, it inaugurated. It kicked off a brand new age for all of creation.
And this quote from Peter's very first sermon in Acts, wow, it just nails that idea of vindication. He basically says, you see this Jesus, the one you guys crucified? Well, God just proved he's both Lord and Messiah.
I mean, talk about a complete 180 on the world's judgment. It's a stunning reversal.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But what does it actually mean to live in this new era or new creation? How does it work? Well, the Apostle Paul actually breaks it down for us in 3 key steps.
So Paul, over in his letter to the Romans, talks about it as a kind of deep participation. It's not like believers just get a get-out-of-jail-free card. The idea is that they are spiritually connected, united with Jesus on his journey. It's like their old self, the one ruled by sin, has died. That old life is buried for good, and now they've been raised to walk in a totally new way of life.
So when you put it all together, the story of the cross and the resurrection isn't just about wiping the slate clean of past mistakes. It's really about kicking off a whole new reality, a new way of being human, powered by the resurrection itself, that starts right now and stretches on forever.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to chew on, doesn't it? These are ancient ideas, for sure, but you can't deny their impact. So how do these concepts of sacrifice, of victory, of total renewal, how do they still shape everything around us, from the way we think about right and wrong to the very structure of our world today? It's a pretty powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining me for this one.